Welcome and Happy New Year. We have entered 2024 officially. And as my first podcast guest of the year, I'd like to welcome Carol Iacobucci. And she is she founded the Carol Connection. So you can always find her at Carol Connection, thecarolconnection.com for more information. And it's really interesting. We've spoken before. So Carol and I know each other for about 3 years virtually. We just met for the first time because we are both co-authors of our incredible book with a total of 9 women, and it is Belonging: Secrets to Soothe the Soul. And we worked on it as a project of love, but we actually published our book through Balboa Press, a subsidiary of Hay House. We also this October did 2 book signings, one in Huntington, New York, and one in Connecticut. And we also give a workshop. So we've come a long way, baby, haven't we, Carol?
Oh, we sure have. Yes, we have.
And we both have the gift of gab, and we have the gift of laughter. So I'm proud to count her among my dearest friends because laughter makes the world go round. As I say, healthy living through joy and laughter. And she has become a coach. I think you've been a coach for a couple of years now. It's called Builder, the Dreambuilder program. And so that's really what I want to talk about with you today, Carol. And the fact that starting a new year, I always think, it's important to let go of the old stuff. And my mantra, which I picked up years and years ago from Louise Hay, a mentor of mine, was, she would always hold her throat, which is the center of communication, the chakra of communication. And she'd say, I'm willing to change and I'm willing to release every person, place, thing, limited belief that no longer serves my highest self. So I always like to begin with, the willingness to change, the willingness to let go, and then what do you put in its place? And so I've done a few exercises, and Carol and I've worked together, with her coaching in terms of dreaming, because before you can manifest, you really have to start dreaming. And a lot of us really shut that down because we're afraid. We're afraid that our dreams may never come true. Of course, when we're kids, it's not a problem. But as we get older and we go through, the ups and downs of life and things like that, we start getting afraid. We don't adapt as well. We don't like change as much. But really, adaptability is key. So I'd like to ask you, Carol, what got you involved in the manifestation of dreams and in this particular coaching program?
Well, my life took several turns a few years back, starting with 2015 when my husband passed away. And I found myself sitting there thinking, geez, I was like 60 at the time. My mom was in her 90s. And I thought, if I have mom's longevity, which I hope I do, I don't want to be sitting here for 30 years by myself. And I thought, I really need to dream up, what do I want the next part of my life to look like? And I went on a search. And I went on a search for a new love, which I'm happy to report I found. And I also then, in the next year, in 2016, I retired from my job. And I had worked various companies for over 42 years. And so when I retired, I thought, well, you kind of look at yourself as, who am I? Well, I was a wife, right? I was a married woman, not anymore. I was a manager at work, not anymore. So you start thinking, well, who am I? Right? So it was kind of a quest or a search for who am I and what am I going to do for the rest of my life?
Right, right. So, some people would say, who am I? And just be paralyzed in fear. Now, did you ever go through that process, or did you just sit for a minute and then start to question all of that? And also, what was the propelling force to get you moving? Because a lot of times from change, people get stuck in fear and lethargy, and they become paralyzed, or they analyze too much, the paralysis of analysis. So
Right.
where were you along that journey?
Well, I probably went through every single one of those stages, and
Uh-huh.
when I first lost my husband, I was certainly stuck in fear and loneliness and sadness. And the reality is that we all need to feel those emotions, right? You
It's
just don't.
stages. So, just people know, I mean, it's not that it's so easy. It's not that it's so hard, but there's a journey that we each have to walk through. I mean, we have to go through a certain tunnel to get to the other side.
Exactly. And you need to feel all those emotions. They're part of life, and you
Yeah.
need to feel them. And you have to, take the time to process that and give yourself time and space to do that, when you go through like major life changes. Um, and it's just part of life. But then you want to think about, well, what do you really want for the rest of your life? You don't want to just be stuck in that stage.
Right.
Um,
So I mean, I always say that when I've fallen flat on my face, and this was back in my 20s, I had to learn how to breathe again because I was paralyzed. I'd broken up a relationship. I was out of the country for 4 months. I lost my car, my house, my dog. And I had to step by step start breathing. Simple, just breathing and
breathing.
sitting with that. And then I said, okay, just take one foot in front of the other. And
Exactly.
it just that little bit of movement, just you don't know where you're going. And I like to say that to young people because I have young children in their early 20s, and I said, you know what? No one has it figured out. Don't think like anyone that's so successful or like a multimillionaire or you think they have it all together. It ain't so. No
No.
one has it figured out. And even at some stage, you need to reconfigure yourself again because it's always about starting over.
Right. There's always change. The one constant in this world is that there's
Constant, right?
change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's one thing to think about too is that life is always expanding. And we are part of this universe. We are part of this life, and life wants to expand through us.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
need to be willing and open to receive that idea and think about it. And like you said, even if it's just a baby step, one little change in what you're doing can lead you to a whole new place. They
Right.
talk about airplanes, right? An airplane never goes directly to its location. It's always off track and readjusting, off track and
Right.
readjusting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if
Changes
it just,
altitude, changes speed. Yeah. Makes
yeah,
adjustment for the wind, the current, the weather, the temperature. I mean, all of that. Yeah.
I heard this great thing about change because we're always so afraid of change. And I heard this great thing about change. I think it was from Deepak Chopra, whom I love. And he was saying something about our bodies are made for change. That our
Exactly.
bodies,
Yeah.
the cells in our bodies are changing constantly. That if there
Constantly.
was anything that's ready for change, it's us and our bodies. And when you
Right.
think about it that way, it's like, well, we should be prepared for any change because our body's used to it.
Yeah, exactly. And, on a cellular level, there's always that recreation. I mean, cells have to degrade and reinvent themselves, right? I mean, that's the process of it. So, with like red blood cells, they have a lifespan of 3 months, but it's not all happening. They're not all recreating at the same time. Some will slough off and die, and then others are being born, and then there's a recreation of that. And so all of our cells need that recreation. And so when people say, well, my body's like this, we think it's static, but it's really not. Even, when I was in school, studying, anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry, it's just all of those chemical reactions that spur other chemical reactions and turn on different systems. And that's how we produce vitamins. Our bodies don't produce it per se. Actually, we don't produce any vitamins, but we take all of those building blocks and then we use the vitamins and we use the elements and the nutrients and the amino acids and we create life force and we recreate on a cellular structure level. So it is fascinating when you look at that. I mean, even when you think about bone, people used to think that bone doesn't grow. It seems hard and not moving. But if you look at it really microscopically, and we're able to go deeper and deeper microscopically, the idea is that it's always, there's osteoblasts and osteoclasts, and the osteoclasts are breaking down and the osteoblasts are making new bone cells. So even at that level where it appears that nothing is happening, it's really all happening. And so our bodies really recreate. And within that, the idea is that we then can embrace that rather than fear
Right.
that.
Exactly. We are creative beings.
Yeah.
And we can
And when you're
create
10, you're
anything.
different than 20. And when you're 20, you're different than 40 and 50. Yeah. It's really fascinating when you bring it all the way down to that level.
Yeah. Wayne Dyer, he tells a story about that in one of his talks way back when. And he says, we think we're this body. And he says, were we this body? Are we the same body we were at 6? No.
Right.
At
Yeah.
10? No. At 13? No. At 20? No. So we're not this body. We are a body in motion and a body in
Emotion. Right.
change. And
Yeah.
so we can think about that and use it as momentum for our own changes we want to create in our life.
Yeah. And in physics, they say, a body in motion stays in motion. So
Mhm.
once you get moving, it's like chugga, 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 chugga.
Right.
Like other things happen, like life happens. There's the interaction, the intersection of miracles,
Miracle.
intersection of people, events. I mean, all of that. So you keep that creative juice going. And that's the part that really fascinates me. And the idea of going back to dreaming, that we start to open up our vision of the world rather than thinking, oh, when you get older, you contract. No. I mean, I remember seeing a movie of a man, and he was elderly. I don't know, at the time, maybe he was elderly to me, who was 20, but, he might have been 60, 70, or 80. But he loved to fly kites. And he said, I love flying kites because it makes me look up.
Mhm.
I don't want to be walking, always looking down. And when I look up, I see the sky and the sun. And he just said, that brings me life. And I love that image. Like, running down, I mean, usually you think about like young kids running down the beach or, running in a field and flying a kite. But when he said that, I thought, yeah, like as we age, if we keep all of that lively and that excitement, we don't age the same way that some people age. I mean, if you think you're going to die at 50, and there are people that say that, I just want to die at 50. I just want to, I want to be gone. It's like, why? I'm so curious about everything. So I think dreaming is really a big part of that. There's an author, Julia Cameron, and she wrote a book called The Artist Within. I think that's the name of it.
Mm.
But she said, have dates with yourself and do things that it's a way of self-care, but do something that you would do as a kid that made you happy, like just pure fun. Like, what did you do that was just pure fun? Not because you were making money, not because you needed to for your job, not because someone else wanted, but have a date with yourself to spur your creativity. And,
Yeah.
when you talk about the work that you're doing, I think that it reminds me of that. Like, you're dreaming, you're helping people dream and begin that process of first dreaming what excites you and then the manifestation of that.
Right. It's really crazy that we end up living as we get older. We end up living a life by default. We let all the circumstances around us
Right. Yeah.
dictate our life.
Yeah.
And, we think we're being responsible, right?
Right. Practical.
Practical, yes.
Right.
But in reality, we're just letting all these outside influences, control what we're doing.
Yeah.
And really, at any point in time, you can say, stop, I'm going to live a life by design. And when you
Yeah.
live a life by design, it means that you start to think about, what do I really want in my life? What would I really love?
Yeah.
And, like you can't go to a builder and say, build me my perfect home, because they're going to say, well, what does a perfect home mean to you?
For you. Right.
Right?
Exactly.
You have to think about it. You have to design it.
Yeah.
You have to write it out. Writing it out too is so important. You
It's
have to write it
important,
out.
right? Yeah. And with social media now, and especially, I mean, for people our age and for people that are younger, we're bombarded with other people's opinions about things all the time. The
Constantly.
news is bombarding us with like, oh, think about this, do this, buy this, sell this, do that. And so a lot of times people just don't know who they are.
they're influenced totally by this little device here, their
Right.
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I think that's the beauty of meditation, just kind of going within and sourcing your own inner source energy
right.
and moving that energy through your own being with that. Yeah.
I was just writing something the other day and I was thinking about creativity. And I thought, you really need to go out and do something like you were talking about, something like when you were a kid that made you feel good, something that's creative, something you lose yourself in, right? And when you do that, then you start to get different ideas come to you. Your intuition, you start to listen to your intuition
Right.
again. You
Yeah.
start to see synchronicities happen. And, you want to follow those. You
Right.
want to,
Yeah.
and being practical again, we say, oh, yeah, that sounds really nice, but I don't do it. But then you always kind of kick yourself when you don't take that action that
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
came to you.
Yeah.
And so you want to listen for those and you want to start to take some steps towards those things.
Yeah. And I think, some of us that don't pay attention to our dreaming, don't pay attention to the synchronicity. Like that supposedly like there are no accidents in life. Like there is a reason, I'm a firm believer of that, having lived a full life. But I remember Deepak Chopra, you mentioned him. He was also one of my early teachers about all of this. And he said, synchronicity is that you're walking down the street with your girlfriend and you're thinking, I'd really like some ice cream. And then you turn to her and say, hey, you want some ice cream? And she says, yeah. And then you're standing in front of the ice cream shop. So it's like the universe converges to get you exactly what you're thinking about. And
Right.
so I love that. It's like you're in the right place at the right time because you've thought about it. Or just something simple like you're thinking about somebody and all of a sudden they call you. And I'm like, I was just thinking about you. Yeah. Like, did you pick up my vibration that I was thinking about you? Or did I pick up your vibration? It doesn't matter. It's like the thoughts converged and you were both like in sync with the same idea. And then one of you picked up the phone and said, hey, what you doing?
Right.
So
And that's so much fun.
it's so much fun. I know. And, I always feel like when I'm really in the flow of things, that's how life happens. And I love that. It's like I'm relaxed and I'm in flow. I like to call that. And you're just in the flow of things. Like you think something and then someone says, oh, like, our women's group, we
Oh,
met
yeah,
over
totally.
business. And then we started just meeting every week for 2 hours, generally on a Wednesday morning. And then we just started, speaking, sharing, and we came up with so many different ideas, related to business, but all related to manifestation of magic. And we created magic. So
Yeah,
things really do happen. And I think it's true, like writing something down, like it actually puts that kind of that practical application because, there are people that they write something at the beginning of the year. And we used to do this at Unity Church. You'd write a letter to yourself and you'd write all the things that you wanted and not look at it anymore.
right.
Just the fact that it was written. And then they would take that letter from you and they send it to you in 6 months. And it's amazing how many things actually got accomplished without really focusing on it. Just the fact that you've written it down already has kind of
Mhm.
imprinted it out into the world. You know, and I'm sure
Right.
some people might think this is woo-woo, but woo-woo is becoming very like everyday
Yes.
reality, right?
Right,
I
right.
mean, it really is. I mean, we're entering the age of Aquarius now, and so, the air is happening and things are traveling, ideas are traveling, thoughts are traveling really quickly.
Well, if you think just about your body doesn't end right here with your skin. Your body continues on, and you have this whole, expansion of energy around you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that energy goes out and interfaces with other people's energies. And so you pick up a lot of
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really
And
interesting.
and one of the big things that I'm interested in is, energy medicine, energetic medicine. And I remember years ago that there were studies, I'm saying like maybe 20, 30 years ago, of people that had illnesses. And I'm thinking particularly of a study that people had heart disease. And unbeknownst to them, there were people in another room that were praying for their health. And they actually saw physical changes in these people. Now, they didn't know that they were that anything was going on. They weren't completely unaware, but it actually impacted them energetically. So, we're calling it energy medicine, like remote healing.
Right.
And so, I see dreaming in that same realm. You're dreaming, but you're also kind of attracting and you're magnetizing. And it really is like energy that's coming forth. And even to look at it on a cellular level, they've done studies of couples, and you set up a certain electromagnetic field because you're in the same physical proximity, and that when one passes, people, when they say you feel the loss of somebody, that it is the heart loss, but you actually have this loss of that magnetic chemical energy that you're used to. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating with that.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah. And so, as you say, if you design it, and I always say, we could live to be 150, and science is actually proving that true. Now people say, oh, who wants to live to be 150? I was like, well, think about if you were 150 and healthy, and you had a clear head, clear mind. It's a whole different 150 than our normal thinking. Oh, 150, you'd be like a skeleton, or you'd be half dead, or dementia. It's like, no, I'm not talking about that. I don't want to be 150 like that either. However, if you think 150 and healthy, boom, it's like a little switch that goes off, and everything changes with that.
Right. Exactly. So that's kind of
about your dream program.
That's kind of the first step of everything, is to kind of write down what you would desire. And some people don't even know what they want anymore. They've put it off for so long. So you kind of start with your longing and discontents. You have longing for things to be different. Okay, so what are those longings that you have, and what would you like them to be instead? So that's kind of a first step. And things you're discontent with. I'm discontent. And it could be in the area of health. It could be in the area of relationships. It could be in the area of your vocation or job, or just even time and money freedom. Those are kind of the four main areas we look at, and we say, well, where are you doing good in those areas? You feel happy about them. And where are you, have some longing discontents? And then you start to look at, okay, well, what would you want instead? And so that's kind of the start to start building your dream. But then you really flesh it out. You really give it examples in real life situations, and you give it a lot of energy, and you kind of five sensorize it, like, where would you be? Maybe you're sitting at a cafe somewhere in Europe, and you're drinking a cappuccino, and you can smell it and you can see it, and you're looking at the beautiful scenery. I mean, you really, really five sensorize it. What are you hearing? Maybe it's music.
Right. Yeah. Make it real.
Make it real. And so you're kind of stepping into that dream. And when you step into that dream, it changes your energy and vibrations.
Right.
Right. Because you're feeling the expansive energy of living in that dream and being there. And then from that energy, you start to think about, well, what is one step I could do today to move me towards that dream? And like you said, it could be a baby step, but you're doing it from that energy.
Right.
And then you're going to start
feel good. You're in your feel good mode. And then you start to say, what's one thing I can do, still in that state, right?
In that state, because you're going to have a whole lot of better ideas than if you're sitting on the couch thinking, my life sucks. Are you going to be able to come up with a really good idea to go to your dream from that emotional state? I don't think so, right?
Yeah.
So you really need to kind of energize yourself first, raise your vibrations first, and think about, well, gee, what could I do to move me towards this dream? And you're going to see that you're going to get some new ideas come about.
Yeah. That's exciting. And I think, and I always say, like, baby steps. You don't have to think that it's going to happen immediately. Because, I mean, we still live in a physical reality. You're not going to get from here to Italy, which would be one of my dreams, to not so much be sipping cappuccino, but to be drinking some vino.
One of the wineries in Florence, yes.
Little Firenze, yeah. So the thing is, so you're not going to get there immediately. It's going to take a minute or two or days, right? But you start the process. It's all about just, the Chinese have a saying, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
Exactly.
So when you think of it like that, it's like, oh yeah, all right. And it may take me a year and you set the date,
Right.
some of the events that I've, people that I've worked with, they say, set the date. It doesn't matter if it happens or not. At least you say 3 months from today, I'm going to produce this event or this show. And then if you need to adjust it, just
Right.
change it, change it. I mean, I told my kids, when I was thinking about what I was going to do after my bachelor's, and I didn't know, I just knew I wanted to be creative, artistic. Well, what does that mean? And I thought, oh, how could I ever make money being creative and artistic? I was sculpting. So I actually closed that door a little bit, but then closing that door brought me to another opening and another opening, another opening. And then when I realized I had to go back to school for 6 years, to become a doctor, I thought, how the heck am I going to do that? 6 years? And what if I don't like it? What if I've invested time and lots of money? And what if I hate it? So I was having these internal conversations, silently with myself. And I was like, Nane, if you don't like it, you'll change. You'll do something different.
Right.
So I always tell my kids, guess what? You're not in prison. You're not a prisoner. Yeah, maybe there's money and you need to pay back the money. There's all considerations, but you have permission. Give yourself permission to change.
Right.
You don't have to be stuck anywhere just because you think you made a decision and you worry about anybody's consideration or that you screwed up, or it's like, no, get rid of that. Get rid of all those preconceived notions of kind of failure. And failure is a good thing, I think. We all fail on some level, but that gives us an understanding of, hey, now I need to pick myself up again.
Right. I just heard this morning a little note about failure, and I forget the author's name now. But he says, you know what the best way to succeed is to fail more. Because
Right.
when you're
I love
failing
that.
more, it means you're trying, and it means you're picking yourself up and you're learning something and you're doing it a little differently the next time.
Yeah.
And you keep moving forward.
Forward. Yeah. I'd taken my kids when they were young to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I knew nothing about, I think his name is Milton Hershey, how he had an idea, because chocolate wasn't really produced in this country. It was produced in Europe, but it was so expensive that, people couldn't afford it here. So what he did was he had the idea to go to a dairy farm and, partner up with dairy farmers. And then that was the dairy and then the chocolate. But you know what? He had 100 different businesses, 100 businesses he failed at until he came up with the right formula. And now it's Hershey's.
Right.
Like, not very many people would be willing to take that failure and keep moving, right?
Keep moving. That's right.
Keep moving. So, like, a crazy story. I thought, wow, that more people need to know that.
And
That's
there's a lot of
incredible.
examples
It's a
about
lot.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
think about Michael Jordan, one of the best basketball players ever. When he was in high school, he was told that he wasn't a good basketball player and that he should never play the game in high
Yeah.
school. He went
In
home
high
and cried.
Yeah.
And look
Yeah.
at he is like the best basketball player.
Yeah. I know, it's
ever.
crazy. And, I was saying the other day, there was a exhibit of Tim Burton's work. And so he had his early drawings when he was a kid, and he was a little outlandish, and nobody, anybody kind of quote unquote normal would know what he was thinking, because his mind was just outside the box. But there they had a framed letter where he applied for a job when he was, I think, 18 or 19 at Disney. And they said something equivalent to, sorry, you have no talent. You can't be here. I mean, it's like, really? But he didn't fit into that box with Disney at that time. I mean, now I think he's collaborated with them on different movies. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not the right time for that group or that person, or they turn you down, but you need to keep that spirit alive in your heart and just keep going. Like, don't give up so easily. Don't give up so readily. Yeah.
Well, even Disney himself was told he wasn't creative.
Exactly.
How crazy is that, right? So we, you don't think about those things, but yet failure
saying it all started with the mouse, right? Did he have
Yes.
this crazy idea of a mouse, right? Yeah.
But
Yeah.
failure is, and the other big F word is the fear. Failure and
Right.
fear are part of the process. And
Yeah.
fear, if you think about it, is really like a boundary. It's a boundary of the things you know versus the things that you don't know. And
Yeah.
once you start to learn some new things, that boundary expands and expands and
Expands,
expands.
exactly. Yeah, until you make it limitless. And, fear, the acronym, false evidence appearing real.
Appearing real, yes.
It's all appearance sake, and we it's like, people that break boards. I mean, we did that through the Tony Robbins experience, and I walked on fire.
My
Like,
gosh.
oh my god. So, no mortal person can walk on, like, whatever, 3,000 degrees of hot fire, coals. But partly it's mind over matter, partly it's like kind of getting in that state of
Mhm.
elevation and just like, going for it or believing that you're going to be okay. Now, granted, you might get burned. I mean, luckily I didn't get burned, but there were people the next day that had little, embers on their feet and had some issues. But I was, just as I was about to walk on the coals, I looked and I was terrified. And it looked gray, but then they threw like red hot embers, like fresh hot red
Oh,
embers. And there was a kid there with his parents, her parents, and I said, Is she doing this?" They're like, "Oh yeah, this is her third time." I was like, "How old is she?" 8.
oh my
8 years
gosh.
old. She did it. This is her third time. I was like, "You know what? If she can do it, I can do it."
Do
And that propelled me. That was the I mean, I was going to do it anyway, but it really gave me that extra sense of confidence and I can do this. I have this.
I love that example too, because it's the other thing that comes up when we go after our dreams is the comparison factor. We look at others and we say, oh, well, they were able to do it, but I can't, or they were able to do
Right.
it. And really, if we think of the comparison, not so much from that perspective, but from the other perspective that says they were able to achieve it, which means it's possible.
It's
So if
possible.
it's
Right.
possible for them, it can be possible for
Right.
me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little
If
different
the
twist
mind, I
on
don't,
it.
who said that? Maybe Napoleon Hill. If the mind can conceive it, you can achieve it.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Think and
Well,
grow
thank you.
rich. Not
Think and
just
grow
rich in
rich,
money,
right?
but rich in life.
Enrich in life. Yeah. And it really, money's great and it's great for giving and giving you freedom, but ultimately you can't take it with you.
No.
So the gift, I think, is the gift of giving to yourself, the gift of life experience and the fun. I mean, for me, it's like if I'm not having fun and I'm not having joy and I'm not working with people that I love, and
Mhm.
I always think my mission is to be in service to the world. And so it's got to fulfill all those things and produce some income for me also so that I can actually share it in charitable foundations. And, the more money you have, I mean, how much can one person have or spend? You can't. I mean, so the
Right.
idea is that more you have, then the more you can share and help lift up other people. So yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly. The more money you have that is really to enable you to do more things, to
yeah,
do more things to
definitely.
help others, to do more things to be, more philanthropic.
Right, right.
But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
really to learn more,
To
and like
learn
you
more,
said,
to
have the
grow more,
experiences.
to experience more. I mean, to really to have the taste of life. I mean, that's what I think.
Mhm.
It's like we're here to live. A lot of people just don't live. They don't experience life because they're trying to fit into someone else's idea of what it's supposed to be, or they're too afraid
Yeah,
to break out, or they don't break out when they're young. And so it's like, oh, I'm too old. I mean,
too
all the
old.
excuses. I'm too old. I don't have money. I don't have this. It's like you have to break through all those like limitations. And a lot of the limitations are really self limitations. And so,
The
um,
majority of them are
yeah. So I
self-limitations.
think the whole idea of dreaming is a great first start.
And that's the other part of the Dream Builder program. So we have this reality of where we are now, and we have this dream of where we want to be. And then we learn tools to help us navigate that gap. And one of
Right.
those tools is to look at failure, to look at fear, both as friends, right? And to look at those limiting beliefs that start to pull us back and say that we can't
Right.
do them, and to replace them with other beliefs that say, I wouldn't have this goal if it wasn't from spirit, if it wasn't from God giving me this goal to pursue.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not even the very end result of that goal. It's who we become in the process as we
Exactly. Yeah.
grow and we learn more things about this life and world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not the end destination, it's the journey, right?
Mhm.
It's the fact that we keep moving, we keep growing, we attract different people, we find our tribe. And, I have to say, meeting you, Carol, was part of finding my tribe and, our women's group and all of
Me
that. So
too.
it's been a blessing in my life. I mean, so many things, so many doors and things, experiences, and like open heart has opened like fully and completely.
Oh
And I
yeah.
love that we're sharing this information. Um, let's do podcast number 2 on our next go round and go a little bit deeper into like the work that you're actually doing with that. But for
Love to.
now, anyone that wants more information, they can go to your website, thecarolconnection.com.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Or you
All
can
right.
find me on Facebook and you can find me on LinkedIn. And you're welcome to send me a direct message on either
Right.
platform.
Yeah. Are you on Instagram also? Well, Facebook, Instagram links, right?
Facebook mainly. Yeah, I'm not really on
Yeah.
Instagram yet, but that's one of the areas
Yeah.
where I want to expand to.
Interesting. I would say 3 years ago, you would find me on nothing. Right? Now we're all everywhere.
Yeah,
Everywhere, nowhere, everything, and nowhere, right? All
right.
right, well, join us. Thank you so much for joining in. If you have any questions, comments, let me know, and any ideas for future things, subscribe to my podcast channel. I think I'm on Buzzsprout and Apple and Spotify. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And we're also on YouTube. We'll post this on YouTube as well.
Great.
Okay, well, as I like to say, ciao, ciao for now. And thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Nane.
Carol. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll do this again.